Football Sunday doubleheader. First in Green Bay, the Packers face the Lions.
Got it! Touchdown!
Then at MetLife Stadium, the Giants host the undefeated Patriots. Coverage begins Sunday at noon Eastern on ESPN Radio. Passion, opinion, must-hear radio. This is the Paul Finebaum Show. And now, Paul Finebaum.
Another hour to go, and after that, a few more. We welcome you back to the program. Jim from Tuscaloosa, his first call of the season, and we are nearly midway through November. Vander Holyfield got us going in the first hour of the show. Many more guests to come, including Gary Danielson at the bottom of this hour. We had Jim, and now we have Charles. Yin and Yang.
Love this little community on the plains. Those straight jacket Jim called back in, didn't he, Paul?
He did.
He can't help it. You know what, though, Paul? I looked up there, heard his old voice, which I get cold chill bumps on me every time I hear that old raspy, moranic voice he's got. But I didn't see no picture of him, Paul. Didn't see no picture. Just heard his old voice. Please put a picture of a straight jacket up there where everybody know who you talking to. Will you do that for me?
Okay.
All right. And Paul, I'm proud of you. You know, we go way back. I used to call in when you was in Birmingham and call you the godfather of sports talk radio. You remember that?
I do remember that. It was great. It was a great time in my life, back when things were happy.
Now, look at you now. You on TV. You got the Paul Finebaum Show on the SEC Network.
Yes, sir.
Man, you come a long way. I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Charles.
Well, I do want you to change the name of your show, though.
And that would be?
Paul Finebaum, Alabama, SEC Network Show. Carl, you are the BAM, you BAM.
You know, I missed guys like Charles and Jim. They made the show what it is, and you just heard it right there. Squirrel is up next. Hey, Squirrel.
How you doing, Paul? Did you have a good time in Oxford?
Yes, we had a great time.
Great. Hey, you know, your puppy wanders off every once in a while, but, you know, he always comes back. You know, that's a good thing. And I'm not going to say that I've missed Jim, but I enjoyed the fact that he called back today. And I kind of like his political take. You know, he's compared himself, you know, I don't want to get into all that, but, you know, he's compared himself to a lot of great people over time, Ted Williams and people of that nature. But it finally dawned on me about halfway through his call who he reminds me of. And he's like a combination of Monica Crowley and Ann Coulter, I think. I mean, would you agree? I mean, he's like our little Republican Ann Coulter, I guess. So I really appreciate his political take. And I understand you're going to be in Starkville this weekend?
Yes, we're heading over there Friday.
Ironically, last week I was getting my oil changed, and I met one of your friends, and you're Mark Rick's mutual friend. You know who that would be?
I'm struggling to come up with the answer there.
Bo Bounds.
Oh, no doubt.
But, yeah, it's the first time I met him. I listen to him all the time on the radio there in Jacksonville FM, on ESPN FM. But first time I met him, seemed like a real great guy. And I'm going to start participating in the show a little bit in the future, I believe. But he says he's coming up to Starkville this weekend. And I think I'm going to go up that way and watch the game. If I do, I'm going to give you a shout. And,
please do.
Good show. Good to hear Jim back again. Aloha.
Thank you very much. Good to have you on board. Let's continue with more phone calls. Wayne is next up in Clemson, South Carolina. Hey, Wayne.
Hey, Paul, I tell you, this is quite an honor. If I could have dinner with Mark Spears and a beer with Larry, I'd really feel great being a 64-year-old veteran. I wanted to thank you for bringing the Clemson veteran player on for your show last year.
Oh, yeah, Rodriguez.
And the Mars Veterans Day. And at 64 years old, I want to remind the young people that I lived in a time when the National Guard came on campus and shot students and came on campus to keep students off of campus. We live in a wonderful world. It's a wonderful show. And if I ever get to eat dinner with Mark and have a beer with Larry, I'll understand why all those old times in the military were worth the wait. Remember tomorrow when you see a veteran, he or she, thank them, and enjoy the rest of the college football season. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Wayne, and that was a memorable show we had last year. Thank you so very much. Good to have you on board. Nick is next up in Oxford, Mississippi. Hey, Nick.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
Really well.
Look, I was just wanting to touch on Jim's comments earlier. You definitely have better hair than Donald Trump. I just want you to know that.
Well, at least it's real.
At least it's real. That's right. But as far as football goes, what do you think the future holds for the Ole Miss Rebels? Do you think we can still win the SEC West?
I do not, because I just don't think Alabama is going to lose again, but I do think Ole Miss can beat LSU. Now, LSU is hard to predict at the moment. I really want to see what LSU does against Arkansas Saturday night.
All right, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nick. Ole Miss is going to have to really hope for a lot of things to happen, well, mainly Alabama losing one of the next two games. Peter Paul is next.
Hey, what's going on, P. Finebaum?
How are you, my man?
All right. I want you to let Marcus know when he gets back on the show, if he does reach Ice Cube, I got the perfect movie for me, myself, you, myself, and Marcus. And that would be Players Club 2. They'd love to have you. Finebaum, you'd be the patron that come in spending the money. Because, I know a little something about you. You got plenty of stuff called money, Finebaum. They tell me your money as long as I can. But I tell you what, we got a hard game coming up. We got to be focused Saturday. As Florida showed you, we were a little off, offensive line. We fumbled a few times, and you have those type of games. But I couldn't wait on this, and I'm so glad that we will be facing old good coaching Nick Saban. Old Bobby like to call in. You got plenty of Bama fans, and rightfully so, because they have been, successful the last 4 years. But I tell you what, and I'll tell the whole entire world, get all your pennies and all your faith, and come SEC championship game, Bama versus the Gators. The Gators will be victorious.
Joe is up next in Panama City. Hey, Joe, good afternoon. Welcome to our show.
Hey, thank you, Paul. I really appreciate your show. You're enjoyable. You're bringing things out about college football that you really never get. But I was going to ask you about if Alabama wins out and LSU wins out, is there a possibility that there could be two in the Final Four, two SEC teams, since you're 7-1? I am a Gator, though.
Yeah, I don't think it's a high probability. I thought it was a better probability if Alabama had lost, that Alabama had beaten LSU in a closer game. We'll have our first clue tonight where LSU falls, but if I had to guess right now, just looking at the map, I don't think it could happen. I don't think it will happen. I think it could happen. What you would need are a couple of things. You would need a Clemson loss somewhere. I don't know where, but maybe in the ACC championship game. You certainly would need a disaster in the Big Ten, which I don't think would help very much. Actually, the thing you would need would be everyone losing in the Big 12. But right now, I think it would be a very tough road, because I think even if Michigan State beat Ohio State and won out, Michigan State would get the nod. If Iowa ran the table, I think they would get the nod. I think the Stanford-Notre Dame winner is in better shape than a one-loss LSU.
Okay,
that is without seeing the poll tonight, but we'll see that in about 3 hours. Thank you very much. Roscoe in Louisiana. Hey, Roscoe.
Hey, Paul, what's going on, sir?
Doing great.
Man, I wanted to ask you, who did Charles from Reeltown want the straight jacket to come up for, him or Jim?
Well, I think Charles's problem is that he's already in a straight jacket.
You may be right about that, Paul. Saying Jim's a little crazy is like saying you a little thin, buddy?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, how many SEC coaching jobs do you think will come open at the end of the year? Because it seems like Kentucky they used to losing, so.
Well, if you look at it, I don't think Kentucky is going to become open, because I think, regardless of this very familiar November swoon, Kentucky still has some winnable games left. Vanderbilt, I think, is in better shape. Once Derek Mason won that game against Mizzou, I think he got himself off the hot seat. I think Georgia is the job to keep your eye on. But what's going to happen is if Georgia comes open, then I think it could cause or create a trickle down. And I see one or two jobs that could become open, but not because a coach would be replaced, simply because a coach could be leaving to go somewhere else.
Yeah, they want to run Mark Richt out, but I tell you what, this thing could unfold to where both of the Mississippi teams could have 3 or 4 losses. And, I mean, I know they talked about, Hugh Freeze having Ole Miss relevant, but, I mean, if you wind up with 4 losses, you're not very relevant. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, no, but, I think he's probably done enough. I mean, I do think, if you had to say, Georgia to me is the most volatile situation. After that, you can paint a worst-case scenario for a couple of places, whether it's A&M. What if LSU loses out? I can't imagine a change being made, but that would be a disastrous situation to lose out. In terms of your conference games, I don't see Hugh Freeze doing anything other than getting another job, frankly. Hey, thank you very much for the call. We're up against a break. 855-242-7285. Gary Danielson coming up here in a few minutes. Many more guests to come. We will be right back.
The Paul Finebaum Show is brought to you by Ballpark Flame Grilled Jerky. Dried to be tough. Flame grilled to be tender.
Truck.
Welcome you back. Glad to have you on board on this Tuesday afternoon. We'll talk to Gary Danielson coming up here shortly. Right now, Rich is up next in Atlanta. Hey, Rich.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call, buddy.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul. Was that the infamous Jim Thorpe from Tuscaloosa I just heard?
That was Jim Thorpe. How did you know?
Yeah. No, he played a little defensive back, too, Hey, I got to be honest with you, man. I probably get blistered for this, but I really do miss him. I think the show needs him. I think guys like I-Man and Larry from Missouri have been kind of like knocked off their axis with not having him, He's everybody's favorite villain. And I'm just glad that he called back. And everybody needs to give him a break about not remembering the 60s because, most 70-year-olds don't remember the 60s. So, anyway, welcome back, Jim. Paul, my question for you.
Yes.
More pressure to win Saturday, Richt or Malzahn?
I think it's Richt because Malzahn has won 2 games that have put him in a position at least to get to a bowl game, so I don't think it's do or die, and I think next year will be more critical for him. But I think Mark Richt loses to Auburn. He's right back to where he was a week ago.
Fair enough. More pressure to win Saturday, Stoops or Art Briles?
I think it's on Art Briles. I mean, this season has been all about Baylor and all of Art Briles complaining. And to me, Bob Stoops has had a pretty good season. I mean, he was definitely on the hot seat. A lot of people did not think he would survive this season. Nearly lost to Tennessee. He blew the Texas game, but has done quite well since.
Yes, and I think and I agree with you, too, especially with Briles as quarterback being out. And I think Oklahoma's the sleeper because if you look at who they have in front of them, and what we talked about, this being a week-to-week poll, they will continue to catapult up. If they beat Baylor, TCU, and Oklahoma State, it's going to be very, very difficult, in my opinion, to keep them out of the Final Four, because that loss to Texas will be forgotten the same way Ohio State's lost to Virginia Tech last year and Alabama's lost to Ole Miss. So I think you're absolutely right there, and I'd watch out for the Sooners.
No doubt.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you very
buddy.
much, Rich. Always good to chat. Let's continue next with G-Man. Go right ahead. Apparently G-Man did not go right ahead. Doris is next. Doris, thank you.
This is my first call in, and I want to tell you what was wrong with LSU, that they didn't play because Les Miles didn't eat his grass.
You're right. James is up next in South Carolina. Hey, James.
Hey, Paul.
Hi there.
Listen, I thought you were supposed to be representing all the SEC.
Okay, and your point is?
Paul?
Yes, I'm hosting a show that's on the SEC network.
Yeah, but why are you so biased to Alabama?
Well, that's a kind of a loaded question. I don't really think I am, but obviously you do.
But listen, somebody say something negative about Alabama and you cut them off immediately.
Are you still on the air?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
But, I'm surprised. But listen, we got a real team here in South Carolina too.
You're a South Carolina fan?
No, sir, I'm a Clemson fan. I live about 22 miles from Clemson.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Obviously, you missed me earlier today, but I had Clemson #1 in my poll.
Well, I know that, but I'm talking about the way you treat Alabama fans.
Okay. Well, how would you...
enjoy your show. I keep watching it, and I'm sure I'll have a lot of people agree with me.
I'm sure there will be...
Alabama show.
I'm sure there will be millions of them. Well, thank you so much for the call.
Yeah.
Jimmy is next in Chicago. Hey, Jimmy.
Hey, Paul.
Welcome to the Bama show.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't help but laugh yesterday when I saw you on with Cannell. Cannell, after watching, I don't know if he watched it or not, I'm sure he did, Alabama annihilate the #2 ranked team, LSU, and he's got Alabama at 4.
I was more than surprised by that.
Yeah, it was shocking. I realized. And then when you ask him, well, how can you have Ohio State at 1 when you're looking at their schedule? You know, they're not even going to play a ranked opponent until their 11th game. And the best he can come up with is, well, they have a 0 next to the loss column. Well, how many teams in the SEC would have a 0 in the loss column playing their schedule up to this point?
That's a great point.
I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable. But, yeah, I mean, I know he has a good time with it, but good grief. At least have something a little bit more concrete to back that up.
Yeah, no, listen, I genuinely like Danny, and we have fun on that show on Monday and Tuesday and on Friday and whatever else we're throwing together. We'll be on together tonight as well. But I just I felt like he was purposely keeping Alabama as low as he could.
Well, I maybe just a little, I guess, I hold over from that Florida State loss. You know, maybe he thought they might be able to just somehow stay in the running. But I got to say this. I mean, to me, the only way a Big 12 team is going to get in that playoff is if they go 12-0, because not playing a championship game, to me, is just, man, it's a really tough burden to overcome. And especially in Oklahoma's case, yeah, they would have some good victories, but I mean, if you're the playoff committee and you're going, now this team was manhandled by a team that got beat 50-7 the previous week. I mean, it's like that is a bad loss. And I do agree that the Virginia Tech loss would have knocked Ohio State out last year had the Big 12 played a championship game. Because no matter who won between TCU or Baylor, that that extra victory in a championship game would have been over either the number 3 or number 4 ranked team. And I don't think Ohio State could have overcome that. But since they didn't have a championship game, it opened the door for them. They got in, and then the Big 12 compounds the mistake by deciding not to play a championship game this year, and it could very well come back to haunt them unless either Oklahoma State or Baylor goes 12-0. I mean, because of their out-of-conference schedule, they have to go undefeated. And, you know, we'll just see, you know, what happens there. But, you know, a lot of football left to be played, but still, I just can't believe the Big 12 potentially finds themselves in this situation again.
Thank you very much. Let's go to John next in Indianapolis. Hello, John.
Hi, Paul. How you doing?
Very well, thank you.
I had a few questions for you regarding the Clemson being ranked number 1, of course. Does that help Notre Dame's chances of making the playoff?
I think Notre Dame's in pretty good shape, really. Notre Dame will be if they're not in the top 4 tonight, they'll be very close to it, and their schedule is good. I think they need Stanford to keep winning. Obviously, Stanford has Oregon this weekend, and I think if they can beat Stanford, they are in a great spot.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm just worried because if Clemson were to lose to South Carolina, for example, at the end of the year, would that hurt their chances?
It might, or may. I mean, right now they're a drafting partner, to use a NASCAR phrase, with Clemson. They need Clemson to keep winning because people will look at that loss and they'll say it's a 2-point conversion, even though, as you remember, Notre Dame was pretty far down and came back at the end of the game.
Oh, yeah, I definitely remember.
Yeah, I bet you do. I think the winner of Stanford-Notre Dame, assuming nothing changes, is in a tremendous position. Now, I think it would help if there's a chance of the Big 12 imploding. It's really not far-fetched when you look at the schedule.
I think they're going to beat each other up.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. So that would be Notre Dame's friend as well.
Yes. All right, well, thank you, Paul. Have a great day.
Yeah, John, I don't think Notre Dame's going to beat Stanford anyway, but who knows? Well, that's one of them. Certainly, I think Notre Dame Stanford winner trumps another one-loss SEC team. We'll take a break. 855-242-7285 is our number. Gary Danielson coming up here in just a few moments. We'll be right back.
Mom, I can't...
Finally, during the Vanderbilt game. We welcome you back to the program. Glad you're on board. Gary Danielson off to Starkville this weekend. The Alabama train continues for CBS, and it's been a pretty good one considering the LSU-Alabama game. Nearly 12 million people viewing the game, the biggest college football audience of the season. I know that doesn't make Gary nervous at all, considering that many people watching. Gary, do you ever think about that when one of those primetime Alabama-LSU games that the numbers are enormous?
No, I figured 10 million are watching Vern and only 2 million are watching.
Well, let's go back for just a moment. Certainly, I don't know if you exactly predicted that on your blueprint before the game.
You know, one of the things that I have predicted about playing Alabama that you have to do is you better bring a quarterback. Okay, I mean, now, Stephen Garcia obviously wasn't an NFL quarterback, but that day he played his best game of his career when South Carolina upset Alabama. Remember when Alabama played that kickoff game, classic game against Michigan, and Michigan brought Denard Robinson in, and he could not get that offense going at all. They just did not believe Denard Robinson was going to throw the ball and hurt him, and how that Alabama team just slammed that Michigan team. But that's how I got the feeling in this game. If you're not going to back up those linebackers and keep those edge rushers from zeroing in on the running back, you don't have a chance. And I understand, and it looked like LSU was going to get out of the half, and even with the field goal, they were lucky to be only down 3 points. They had basically 2 good plays in the first half. It just, without the quarterback threatening Ragland and Foster and Dylan Lee and Denzel Duvall and keeping the safeties from slamming down. I know they weren't lining up in the box, but they were slamming down in that box pretty fast. You've got to keep this defense honest or you have no chance. And LSU just, whether they didn't want to believe in their quarterback or they were trying to shorten the game and get it to the second half, it was really tough on this team because they couldn't block them and they couldn't throw it, and it was pretty ugly.
It really was. Clearly, Saturday in Starkville will be a different challenge. Dak Prescott, everyone knows about. Let's look ahead to that game.
Well, I was just rewatching the game from a year ago, and I wrote down from the open that this is the biggest game in Mississippi State history. And it was. Remember, they were the number 1 team in the country just a year ago coming into Tuscaloosa. And I thought that Dak would be ready for that game. But he came in limping a little bit in that game. He was turning the ball over, and he turned the ball over in that game. He got no help from a running back, Josh Robinson, and the score again was not as close as the game. The score was closer than the game appeared watching it or broadcasting it. In fact, Dan Mullen actually took the air out of it late, even though he was behind, to keep it as close as it was, in my opinion. But even though Mississippi State lost a lot of football players, they bring a lot of veteran players back to this team. Almost everybody that will line up against Alabama played in this football game. They only have 1 true freshman in their top 2 deep on both sides. It's kind of the mere opposite of Alabama. The program at Mississippi State, you have to bring your recruits in, you have to put them into the weight room, you have to redshirt them, and you have to bring them along when they're juniors and seniors. And even though some of these players haven't played a lot as starters, they were on the team, they have lettered, and they have participated in the SEC for a couple years before they came into this football game. So you're going to see a lot of guys in this game that have played a lot of football, and now they get a big game at home with, I think, a quarterback that has to be ready. If Dak Prescott isn't ready for this one, the only thing he has to do is win 1 more game in his big career, this coming up, and he will be basically remembered as one of the great quarterbacks the SEC has produced, I believe.
Gary Danielson talking about Alabama's challenges. Gary, just following Alabama along all year, and you've seen them so many times already, do they play differently, or what was so outstanding about Saturday night? It seemed like it was a cut above everything else we've seen.
And I think you're right, Paul. One of the things that we always do with the great teams is we don't give them credit for improving as the year goes along. We always see the teams at the middle or the bottom of the standing and say, wow, this is an improved football team. From game 1 until game 8, they've really come on. At the beginning of the year, they didn't have. Well, I'll tell you right now, this is an improving Alabama football team. Look what's happened to them since the beginning of the year. Calvin Ridley has become a legitimate SEC threat. Darius Stewart has become a legitimate threat. Through the first 4 games, number 1 receiver was Richard Mullaney, the slot receiver. He's now become the 3rd receiver. Kenyon Drake, it looks like, has finally found his groove back to the way he was before he got injured. Now, if you give an Alabama team a 1-2 punch, and as diverse as these 2 guys are, that has improved. I thought the picture of the night for Alabama, and why a lot of these teams want to go no huddle and keep them off balance, was the one, I don't know if you saw this, was the one where LSU, it was either a TV timeout or some kind of a timeout, and LSU was huddling like they do with 20 or 30 players on the side, and Alabama didn't know who was going to come on the field. And we were up in the booth, we're saying, look at this, and we took a shot of 19 Alabama players on the field ready to react for whatever LSU was going to bring out on the field. Was it going to be 3 wide receivers? Was it going to be 2 tight ends? Was it going to be a fullback and a tailback? But as LSU trotted on the field, 8 Alabama players trotted off the field, and that's the group that was out there to stop them. That's what you face when you face Alabama. You face not 11 good players. You face 8 deep in the defensive line. You face 6 defensive backs that all can cover you. About 4 or 5, one of the stars of the game, the linebacker Dylan Lee, as Kirby Smart likes to say, when we're playing these spread teams, I don't like to get in his vision because he's mad at me because he's not going to play a lot. He was one of the stars of the game. He can't even get on the field some games. This is how deep this team is. But you have to have the right makeup to keep them off balance. And in theory, with a veteran quarterback and a lot of receivers and one big receiver in De'Runnya Wilson, they have the formula that can stress Alabama. Now, can they do it up front? We'll see. Probably not unless they keep them off balance. Can they throttle the running game as much as Mississippi State did a year ago? They did a decent job against them a year ago. The question is, Lane Kiffin is going to figure out that they've got injuries at the corners, and as much tape as they've watched Derrick Henry running the ball, he's going to start dialing up those play-action passes again. It's not going to be easy, but I'll tell you don't have a chance without a quarterback, and at least Mississippi State brings a quarterback to the game.
Finally, Gary, just want to get your thoughts on Derrick Henry. We made such a big deal about the showdown with Fournette.
Right.
Henry was a major star. Your thoughts on him moving forward?
Well, I got to give Lane and Nick and the whole group over there a lot of credit, and also got to give Derrick. He's much like Amari Cooper. He fits into the offense, and he's not selfish. You have to imagine over the last couple of years, Derrick Henry has been knowing that at the back of his mind, he could carry the ball between 25 and 30 times and be a star. But if you watch, all through spring football, all through off season, one of the guys that Nick Saban constantly talked about as one of the hardest workers he had on the football team was Derrick Henry. Up until this game, Derrick Henry was on the punt coverage team. This game they took him off to keep him a little bit safe and rested, probably because they knew we were going to run him a lot. He's just like Cooper, just like Julio Jones. He knows he's a star, but he fits into the system, and he waits his time and turn. And boy, when he turns upfield, for the size he is, and the way he turns upfield, the way he runs, I'm sure that the pro scouts will be salivating for what he can do at the next level.
Gary Danielson, Saturday in Starkville as he continues covering Alabama. You'll see them plenty the rest of the way.
As we say, the Crimson Broadcasting System.
No doubt. Gary, many thanks. We'll talk next week.
Got it. Thank you.
Great stuff from Gary Danielson, who has seen Alabama, I believe, 4 times. Let's see, A&M, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU. See him 5 times. See him 6 times probably see him 7 times this year in all. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back with more and your phone calls.
Did you ever look...
Gus Malzahn played a big role in what happened 2 years ago at the Iron Bowl. Will likely play a lot of a role as well, but he's not thinking about Alabama just yet.
Playing a very talented team in all 3 phases this Saturday defensively, top 15 in the country. They defended us probably better than anybody did all last year. I think they held us to 7 points, and statistically speaking, did a good job against us also. Offensively, they're the number 2 rushing team in our conference. They run the football. That's what they do. That's going to be a big key to the game, us stopping the run. We are very glad to be playing at home against these guys.
Gus Malzahn talking about this weekend, and with a win against Georgia, Auburn suddenly going into the Iron Bowl with a lot of momentum. I don't think it's the end of the world. Maybe if you're an Auburn fan it is, but I still think that game will be intriguing as long as Alabama wins this weekend. If Alabama loses, then it will be one of the least intriguing Iron Bowls in many, many years. Teresa is up next. Hey, Teresa.
Hey.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for asking. And how are you doing?
I'm well. My comment today, I always watch, I've always been a fan of Alabama, but my comment today, I love to watch the Alabama football games, and then the commentator we always get on the show is Vern Lundquist, Gary Danielson, and it just always seems like he has something negative to say about the team Alabama.
Well, Teresa, you're not the only one who has said that. I don't understand that rationale, but I try to watch the game differently than maybe a fan or an Alabama fan does. But you have a lot of company in that, and maybe one day we did this a number of years ago. We let Gary take phone calls, I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, and Jim from Tuscaloosa called in and beat Gary down so badly we haven't taken calls for him since. I mean, it was classic. I wish we had a tape of it. But maybe one day I can talk to Gary and say, hey, why don't you come on one day and let's solve this issue of why Alabama fans think you're out to get them. Robert is in Seattle, and you're next. Hey, Robert.
Hey, how's it going, Paul?
Okay.
Something that came out this weekend that kind of interested me is that first off, I'm a huge proponent for Gus Malzahn. I like him at Auburn, but it came out that Rhett Lashley made a lot of the play calls on Saturday. And it doesn't seem that's getting a ton of coverage, but I think that had a huge bearing on the win. What do you think on that?
Well, listen, I mean, Rhett Lashley plays a critical role every game for the Auburn offense. I thought it was a great game for Auburn, and it was long overdue, and I think Auburn is capable. Now, defensively, can they do that? Can they do their part of the bargain? Thank you for the call. Appreciate it very much. Let's go to Frank next in Louisiana. Hey, Frank.
How you doing today, Paul?
Okay.
Well, I'd just like to make a comment on what you said about Leonard Fournette, that he laid an egg. You know, he's a fine young man, and I don't think comments like this helps him very much when his whole offensive line laid an egg.
Well, let me say this, Frank. I think you're right. I said that. I mean, there's no question I did say it. I don't know if I really meant it like it came out, but I regret saying that, and I apologize. I was trying to characterize something, and I think I ended up blaming him, and it really wasn't his fault. It was a team effort, and he had nowhere to go.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, Paul, and we'll do better.
No, well, the second I said that, again, we're all human, and I don't think that was exactly what I intended, but I did say it, so all I can do is apologize for it. Thank you for the call, though. Wayne is up next in Tennessee. Hey, Wayne, thank you. Good afternoon.
Thanks for taking my call, Paul. My question for you is with all the coaching vacancies that's kind of coming about this year, I'm a diehard Bama fan, and I don't want to lose either one of our coordinators. I'd like to get your take on which one we would lose first, and or if we'd lose both of them. Whether
I think Lane Kiffin clearly is looking for a head coaching job. I don't think he'll be there next year, only because I think he wants to move on. Kirby Smart is mentioned for several jobs, and if he gets an offer that I think he wants, I believe that I think Kiffin is more likely, but I think there's a reasonably good chance both will be gone. And Nick Saban has not had to. Well, actually, he did after his first year. Kevin Steele was essentially demoted to co-coordinator, and Kirby Smart was elevated, and then Major Applewhite left. And I believe it was Jim McElwain who came in. So Saban's been down this road before. Appreciate the call. Tom Luganville coming up shortly.
Have you heard? Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt, frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
It's a football Sunday doubleheader. First in Green Bay, the Packers face the Lions.
Got it! Touchdown!
Then at MetLife Stadium, the Giants host the undefeated Patriots. Coverage begins Sunday at noon Eastern on ESPN Radio.